The dog came back, dragging half a wetsuit. It was stiff with salt and torn at the thigh, like someone had tried to pull free but didn't make it. I watched as Rosie, my sister's Labrador, dropped it on the sand like a prize. She barked once, then sat, panting and proud. The wind pushed at my jacket. The beach was empty. There'd been stories about the dunes past Hollow Point, stories that said the tide came in fast enough to cut you off, the kind of warning you hear as a kid and only half believe. But people had gone missing, not often, just enough to stay a rumor. Last month, it was a couple who left their camper van running. They never made it back. Rosie had darted ahead before I could leash her. I followed her tracks up past the sign that read, "No entry beyond this point. Coastal erosion," half buried in sand and faded by the sea. Now, here she was, nudging the wetsuit again. I crouched down. There was something still inside it. A leg, maybe. I didn't want to look too closely. "Drop it," I said. Rosie whined. The wind picked up. I turned toward the dunes. They were steep, oddly shaped, like something had been burrowing from the other side. A long groove ran between two of them, deep and dark and damp. Rosie trotted toward it. "No! Come back!" She didn't. She sniffed along the groove, tail stiff. Then she stopped, head low, hackles up. A shape rose slowly from behind the dune. At first I thought it was seaweed caught on driftwood, but then it moved, smoothly, deliberately. Arms, or what passed for them, folded out from its sides. Long, thin, webbed things that didn't look like arms at all. Its skin was pale, almost translucent. A line of barnacles crusted its back. It made no sound, just stood there, dripping, watching. Rosie barked, then mimicked. I grabbed her collar and pulled hard. We stumbled back down the beach. I didn't look behind me. We crossed the old fence line, past the warning sign. Rosie yanked forward, desperate to get away. Only when we reached the gravel pull-off by the road did I stop. My heart slammed in my chest. My hands were shaking. I looked back. Nothing. Just the dunes, quiet and still. The groove was gone. I didn't tell anyone. What could I say? That I saw something that shouldn't exist? That Rosie dragged home a piece of a person? They'd think I was lying. Or worse, trying to stir up the old stories. So I said nothing. 3 days later, another wetsuit washed up. No one inside this time. Just shredded neoprene and a dive knife rusted into the sheath. Then a kayak, crushed like a soda can. People started whispering again. I started checking the beach every morning. I told myself it was to keep Rosie out of trouble. But really, I was watching the dunes. They seemed different now. Taller, more twisted. The grooves came and went, like something crawling beneath the surface, shifting the sand at night. One morning, I found a camera, salt-stained and half-buried. I took it home, cleaned it, charged the battery. There were only 3 photos. The first was a blurry shot of the ocean at dusk. The second showed a wet, half-lit tunnel. Maybe a sea cave, maybe not. Something glistened on the walls. The third was a close-up of an eye. Not human. Round, slick, glassy. Water pooled in the corner like it was still crying. That night, I dreamed of the thing I saw. Except in the dream, it was closer. I could hear it breathing, gurgling. I woke up with sand in my sheets. I tried to stay away after that. I really did. But last week, Rosie got out. She slipped the gate. My sister was frantic. I knew where she'd gone. I found her tracks just past the sign. The sky was heavy with fog. I shouted until my voice cracked. Then I heard a bark, high and faint, toward the dunes. The grooves were back. I followed them. The sand was damp, heavy, like it had just been stirred. The path twisted left, then right, then deeper, between walls of dunes so high they blocked the light. I found Rosie's collar. It was torn. Something moved behind me. I turned, fast. The thing was there, closer this time. It crouched low, fingers in the sand, head tilted. It opened its mouth. Rows of teeth, all the same size. No throat, just darkness. I ran. I don't remember how I got out. I just remember the sound, a kind of sloshing hiss that followed me all the way to the road. Rosie never came back. Now, every night, I hear the tide in my dreams. It doesn't crash like it used to. It whispers. It pulls. And sometimes, just before I wake, I see the dunes again. Only this time, they're not made of sand. They're made of people. And one of them is still wearing Rosie's collar. Story 2. The Second Tide. The gulls stopped screaming at dusk, as if something in the waves had worn them away. Tom noticed the hush first and felt his stomach tighten. He had driven to Kettlemouth Beach to clear his head after the funeral, expecting only salt air and numbness. Instead, he found a silence so thick it pressed against his ribs. A narrow strand curved ahead, strewn with wrack and bits of pale driftwood. The tide had already turned, but the wet sand still shone like oil under a bruised sky. Tom's sister Mia had loved this place. She said the rip current here felt like an engine beneath her board, hauling her towards something big and bright beyond the break. Last week, that same current delivered her body 3 coves south, face down, arms folded as if in sleep. He knelt where she used to plant her towel and traced a finger through the sand. The outgoing tide whispered, sifting grains around his hand. Then he heard another sound, a faint inhale that seemed to come from beneath the beach itself. Tom straightened. The hush returned. He told himself it was just the sea pulling air through drains in the shingle. Still, his pulse clattered. A pale shape bumped over the first line of breakers. Moonlight slid from a torn patch of cloud, revealing a plank of weathered oak. Iron nails jutted like teeth. The board rode the foam until it grounded, pointing straight at him. Tom stepped back. He recognized the wood, a fragment from the old lifeboat station that collapsed 20 years ago. Locals said the pilings never stopped creaking, even after the last beam fell. They blamed restless water, but kids whispered about the first crew who drowned on a practice launch and walked back up the beach, tongues black with salt. The plank shifted again, nudged by a fresh surge. Tom blinked. The tide was rising, fast. Charts called this coast microtidal. A proper flood needed hours. Yet the sea now rolled in 3 steady ranks, each higher than the last. He turned toward the car park, but foam was already licking the dunes. Wind tore across the flats, driving sand like shot. In its roar, he caught another voice, thin, girlish, carried on the gust. "Tom! Wait!" He froze. The voice came from the water. It sounded like Mia, but muffled, as if spoken through cloth. "This isn't real," he muttered, backing away. His heel struck something soft. He looked down at a child's red flip-flop, half buried in slurry. A second flop lay farther up, leading toward the sea. Another wave thundered. The foam retreated, and there she was, Mia, standing ankle-deep where the bar of sand had been, hair matted with kelp, eyes fixed on him. She raised one arm, palm open. Tidewater poured from her sleeve. Tom's breath failed. Mia's funeral pyre had burned the night before. He had watched cords of drift pine hiss under her weight, yet here she stood, lips working, trying to shape a word. Behind her, something vast stirred. At first, Tom thought it was a reef. Then it swelled higher and separated from the sea, a wall of dark water that did not break. Inside that wall, shapes twisted, white and long, like eels glimpsed beneath ice. The wall advanced without sound. It cupped Mia in a hollow and carried her a step closer. Tom smelled rot and iron. He staggered upslope. The car was gone, claimed already, wheels flashing like coins beneath the flood. Only the picnic tables stood above the rush, bolted to concrete pads. He clambered atop one and yelled her name. Mia's grin split wide, showing gums raw as coral. She did not answer him. Instead, she pointed beyond him toward the dunes. Tom pivoted. A line of figures slogged through the grass. Men, women, children, all wearing the same blank smile. Their clothes dripped. Moonlight picked silver gull feathers tangled in their hair. He knew them. Old photos in the village hall, faces lost at sea during storms no one remembered. The second tide, locals called it, when the dead returned what it had borrowed, and sometimes took payment. The water sheeted over the table and soaked Tom's shoes. His phone lit under his jacket, buzzing with a weather alert he had no time to read. Waves slapped his knees. The wall reached him at last. Cold beyond pain closed around his legs, then his chest. The sea tasted wrong, sweet like spoiled milk. He clawed for the sky but felt only soft hands guiding him under. Someone pressed their cheek to his ear. "Breathe," Mia whispered. Her voice was calm now, almost kind. He obeyed. Brine filled his lungs. Yet he did not drown. The water thickened, holding him suspended like a fly in amber. Around him the lost walked, their feet brushing a seabed that was no longer there. They marched inland beneath the surface that followed them like a glass roof. Streetlights rippled above, dimmed, and vanished beneath rolling black. Tom drifted forward, helpless as flotsam, while the second tide climbed the estuary and into town. Doors burst inward. Windows popped, letting in shining sheets that crawled upstairs. The living woke too late, lungs emptying in silent screams. At sunrise, Kettlemouth lay clean and bright. Gulls returned to pick at weed on the tide line. Only a curious shimmer in the gutters hinted at the night. Tom stood on the church tower with the others, watching the ordinary tide ebb. Sun warmed his face but could not chase the damp from his bones. Behind him the wall waited, quiet as breath held in a throat, until the next time someone needed to remember that nothing taken by the sea is ever truly gone. Story 3. Lantern at low tide. They told me the ocean coughed up strange things after midnight, but I didn't expect the lantern to still be lit. The soft green flame bobbed at the line where wet sand turned dry, as if it had walked ashore on its own. I was the only one on patrol tonight. Off-season meant the boardwalk was locked, stalls shuttered. No carnival music, just wind and the hush of dark water. Our little town, Gull's Rest, shrank to a handful of winter caretakers who kept lights from rusting and pipes from freezing. We stayed because rent was cheap and the gulls were easier company than people. The lantern winked again. A pale glass globe, brass cage, no batteries I could see. It glowed like algae in moonlight. I knew the tide schedule. Low tide had peaked an hour ago. Whatever the sea wanted to return, this was it. I stepped off the boards and crunched across shells. The air smelled metallic, like deep ocean, instead of the usual salt candy stink. I bent down and put my hand around the handle. Warm. That scared me more than cold would have. I raised it, half expecting wires or hidden bulbs. Nothing. Just old oil, somehow unburned, somehow bright. Behind me, the boardwalk lights died with a sigh. The whole strand went black, even the emergency beacons that never failed. Only the lantern stayed alive. Green glow, licking the wet timber of my boots. Something shifted under the sand. A tremor. Light but deliberate, like a thing turning over in sleep. Then a second. The shoreline curved, empty in both directions. No boats, no cars, no other footprints. I heard water swirl, though the sea was flat. I should have left. Every instinct told me to drop the lantern and sprint for the service shack. But the glow drew me. It felt like looking down a pier and seeing coins a child dropped. Shiny, harmless, begging to be picked up. I carried it toward the breakers. The tide, which should have been retreating, inched back up the beach. Foamy fingers curled around my shoes. The water was warm, too. Bath warm. Out of season and out of place. With the lantern held out in front of me, I saw figures under the surface. Not bodies, outlines, as though someone had sketched people into the water with a dull knife. They floated a few inches below, faces upward, mouths shaped in perpetual surprise. The shore hissed. Sand collapsed under my right foot, and I sank to the knee. The lantern jerked downward as if a rope were tied to it. I yanked back. The flame inside sputtered. For a heartbeat, the beach flickered between green and pitch black. Voices rose under the hiss, a muted chorus saying my name, Nathan, drawn out like wind through a pipe organ. Thoughtful. No one knew I was here except the night supervisor, and he was 2 miles inland, nursing cheap coffee, straining. I tried to shout, but the sound caught on salt. I pulled free, stumble running up the slope. The lantern fought me the whole way, heavier with every step. When I reached the wooden stairs, its glow dimmed, not from weakness, but from distance, as though the beach itself powered it. I set it on the first plank, and light thudded back, hungry. The boardwalk groaned. A long, slow crack unzipped down the center boards, following me. Nails popped like corn. The coastline darkened further. Clouds choked the moon. Yet the green circle at my feet stayed bright. Thoughtful. I remembered an article my grandfather kept clipped in a Bible. Year 1904. Schooner Delphi wrecked off Gull's Rest in a rogue storm. 21 souls lost. A single deck lamp washed ashore 3 days later, still burning. Searchers who followed the glow found nothing but their own footprints circling back. Superstition said the dead were using the lamp to find the ship that betrayed them. Somber. Grandad never explained why he saved that clipping. But I knew tonight. The crack in the boards reached my boots. Planks sagged, exposing black space. Down there, waves didn't lap. They breathed. I heard timbers creak like a hull twisting. Salt air smelled of old canvas and whale oil. Delphi wanted her lamp back. Hesitant. For a second, I wondered if giving it would end things. Contemplative. Hand over the light. Close the doorway. Go home to radio silence and pretend none of this happened. The flame fixed taller, tasting the thought. Another tremor. Water welled through the split boards, pooling around the lantern. Cold this time. The green fire throbbed brighter. The pool deepened, dragging screws and candy wrappers into a spiral. Urgent. I knew if I let the lantern touch that water, the whole boardwalk would drown.
So I did the only stupid thing left. I kicked the lamp. My foot smashed the globe against a post, shattering glass in a burst of hot foam. The flame tore free, a living shard of emerald, and shot upward. It hovered at eye level, whirling like a hurricane in a jar without the jar. Then it rushed toward me. I braced, but it passed through my chest and into the night behind, streaking toward the surf. The water erupted in a geyser lit from within. I saw the outlines again. Men, women, a child clutching a doll, rising on the column, caught in glass. Their mouths moved in silent relief, or accusation. I couldn't tell. The The geyser folded back into itself, sucking sand, splinters, and darkness. When it crashed, the lantern frame tumbled across wet planks. Empty. Lights along the strand flickered on. The split boards knitted shut with a grunt of wood, leaving only warped nail heads to mark the wound. The surf retreated like any normal tide. The outlines were gone. I realized then my boots were dry. Not just drying, bone dry, as if the water that touched them had never existed. My watch said 1:03 a.m., yet salt crusts on the rail had turned to fresh sawdust, like new construction. Time had rewound itself, or skipped a groove. I picked up the twisted lantern frame, cold now, heavy with rust, centuries old. I set it in the trash barrel, but I knew that wouldn't matter. At dawn, tourists would return, chasing gulls and funnel cakes. Someone would find a different relic gleaming at the tide line. A compass, a whistle, maybe a child's doll with sea glass eyes. They'd pick it up because humans can't resist things the sea gifts for free. And that night, the Delphi would look for her lost piece again. As I locked the maintenance gate, I heard a faint clink from inside the trash barrel. I didn't look back, but the sound followed me through the parking lot. Steady metal tapping, counting each of my steps, matching them beat for beat until I reached my truck and drove inland, away from any water, pretending land goes on forever. But every road ends somewhere, and the sea waits there in the dark, whispering my name.